My fiancée left me a note on my birthday that read, "I found someone better." I didn't say a word. I just let karma do its work. 6 months ago, everything changed overnight. I'm 36 years old and work as a civil engineer at a mid-sized company. Until recently, I was engaged to Chloe, 31. We had been together for 4 years, 3 of which we lived in my house. I bought the place after my father passed away. He left me enough for the down payment on a 3-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but the mortgage was comfortable, and the yard was big enough for the dog I always wanted. Though Chloe claimed to be allergic, my parents, my father, a laborer, and my mother, a school secretary, sacrificed to put me through engineering school. He always drove an '89 Chevy Silverado and taught me how to change the oil at 12. Today, I drive a 2010 Tacoma I bought used with 80,000 miles. Chloe was never happy with it. She thought my truck was too modest and unprofessional for client meetings. I refused to go into debt for an image, and when my father died of a heart attack 5 years ago, I promised myself I would seize the opportunity he gave me. Chloe works in pharmaceutical sales and earns about $8,500 plus commissions. With that income, we lived comfortably, though we weren't rich. We planned to get married next summer. We had already put down a $4,000 deposit. Her parents were covering the rest, and everyone seemed excited until the minor disagreements began to multiply. Everything changed half a year ago. First, there were the dinners with her clients, which grew more frequent, and her late arrivals home smelling of someone else's cologne. When she was away, I always found receipts for expensive restaurants, and when I pointed it out, she accused me of being controlling with money. Then I noticed my great childhood friend David started canceling our weekly basketball games and avoiding eye contact. I couldn't figure out why. The final straw was my birthday last month. I took the day off to stay home with Max, my one-eyed orange cat whom I adopted 3 years ago. In the morning, Chloe handed me a package wrapped in dark paper. "Don't open it until tonight," she said, kissing me on the cheek. "I have dinner with the regional director, but I'll be back at 10 and we'll celebrate." I left it untouched. Around 8 p.m., with Max purring in my lap, I opened the gift. It was a black hoodie with the logo of our favorite band. In one pocket, I discovered a folded note. It wasn't a receipt, it was her goodbye. It read something like, "Ethan, I can't keep doing this. The wedding, the house, and everything we dreamed of is no longer what I want. I've found someone who makes me feel alive again. By the time you read this, I will have taken only what is fair. I'll collect the rest later. I'm sorry it has to end this way." I stared at that paper for minutes, reconstructing every missed signal in my mind. The late nights, the unexpected work trips, her excessive phone privacy, and the absurd fights over trifles. Once we argued for an hour because I bought name-brand cereal instead of the organic one she preferred. I decided to check our shared cloud account. Chloe wasn't tech-savvy and hadn't realized her phone photos were automatically syncing. I found dozens of images of her with a tall, muscular man in an expensive suit, at restaurants, in a cabin. The dates revealed that this had been happening for at least 4 months, and in a folder called Weekend Getaway, the man appeared standing in front of my car, the same one I let her use occasionally. I explored her message backups and found repulsive conversations. Chloe mocked me. She described me as boring and talked about starting her real life with this Dorian, a doctor at a hospital where she had clients. Just then, my phone rang. It was David. "Dude, we need to talk. It's urgent." I called him back instantly. "What's wrong?" He told me he had been seeing them together at the coffee shop for 3 months and caught them kissing in the parking lot last month. Dorian warned him that if David said anything, Chloe would file a lawsuit and David would lose his job. David wanted to tell me without drama but didn't know how. My God, what am I going to do? I repeated to myself, with no solution in sight. The next day, I took the first step. I called my father's old friend, who is now my insurance agent, and told him everything. I canceled the wedding insurance policy as soon as I finished speaking. He sighed and, in a grave voice, warned me, "Son, I'm going to have to talk to your Uncle Paul. Do you want to know what this is about?" 2 hours later, Uncle Paul was on my porch holding a six-pack of beer. "Your old man's favorite brew. We have to toast," he said as he offered me a can. A broken engagement hurts, but a failed marriage hurts more. We stood in silence for a while. "Your father would have acted just like you," he finally added. For me, that comment was the highest compliment, an invitation to maintain my dignity and keep a cool head. I decided to take a week off to organize myself. First, I changed all the locks in the house. Then, I checked our finances. The joint account had about $12,000, most of it from my recent bonus. I transferred the total to my personal account. The next day, I called the event hall and the photographer, explained the situation, and requested that the deposits remain exclusively in my name. The manager, Diane, was understanding and agreed without issue. Meanwhile, I prepared a folder with screenshots of all the messages and photographs I had discovered, strictly organized by date. I didn't yet know how I would use that information, but it was important to have proof. Every night that week, I stayed up until 2 or 3 a.m. investigating. I reviewed the hospital staff listings until I found Dorian's profile, Chief of Neurosurgery, impeccable career. I made a spreadsheet to cross-reference his surgery hours with Chloe's nighttime meetings. I found his LinkedIn and noticed strange gaps in his work history. I accessed Chloe's Instagram from the shared iPad and documented every interaction with him over the last 6 months. On the 4th day, Chloe called to ask about her things. "We need to talk," she began in a strained voice. "I'll close things out as soon as possible," I told her. "I'll stop by tomorrow at 6 to pick up everything." When I reminded her that I had changed the locks, she let out an insecure laugh. "That house is half yours," she retorted. I laughed. "Your name is not on the deed or the mortgage. You've never paid a tax or the insurance. Tell me then, what half is yours?" She tried to defend herself using the engagement. "We were engaged," I replied, "in the past, just like your promises." She fell silent, conceding the point. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Thomas Whitfield, Chloe's lawyer. He informed me that she would be coming, escorted by the police, to collect her belongings, and that I would soon receive news about the status of the house. I kept my calm and told him, "Before you make threats, inform yourself about the cloud account I shared with my father. I have folders with photos of the Laxadrin in March and the family cabin in April. I can show them to Ms. Whitfield if necessary." He didn't respond again. An hour later, Chloe texted, "You're an asshole. What time can I pick up my things?" We agreed on the following Saturday. She arrived accompanied by Sarah, her younger sister, who intelligently avoided bringing Dorian. I spent the morning packing everything into black bags and cardboard boxes. I was on the front steps with Max on my lap, not looking in her direction. Sarah, always serene and genuine, the complete opposite of Chloe, helped me load the boxes into her Range Rover. "I'm sorry about all this," she murmured. I replied, "It's not your fault." She stopped, pensive, and added, "I think she's making a huge mistake. Dorian has ruined relationships before." I told her the story about the nurse. He left her for Chloe and then dumped her 3 months later. Don't tell Chloe anything. For her, this is an epic love story. Your secret is safe with me. That night, Sarah called Ethan, my best friend. Chloe took things that don't belong to her. I saw her backpack, the signed baseball glove your father left you, and your grandfather's watch. I told her she shouldn't have left with the engagement ring. It was worth $20,000 and was virtually all my savings. I sat in my father's recliner, the one Chloe detested, and thought about my next move. That theft of family objects was the last straw. I had to investigate Dorian more. The next day, I met with David at a restaurant away from the hospital. "His name is Dorian Chamberlain," he explained while pouring me a coffee. "Neurosurgeon, early 40s, around $800,000 annual salary, 2 divorces, drives a custom Maserati, the whole rich and important package. Does he have a bad reputation?" I asked. "There are complaints about his treatment of patients and nurses and rumors of irregular medication. Some drugs disappear from his cabinets under the table. There was also a nurse, Stephanie, who dated him." When they broke up, she was transferred from the ER. She says he manipulated her, accused her of infidelity, and threatened to ruin her career if I talked to that lead. I located Stephanie in the hospital directory and, after several shifts, approached her. She described how Dorian pursued her during her engagement, promising to leave his fiancée. He did so 3 months later, but soon began to behave jealously and controlling. When she found pills in his locker, he threatened her. He's a narcissist and a possible addict, Stephanie concluded. Protected by his father on the hospital board, he repeats the pattern: hook, destroy, and leave behind. How do I hit him where it hurts the most? I asked her. In his reputation, she replied as she stood up. Good luck, and don't try to warn him. Let him learn the hard way. As Stephanie left, my phone vibrated. A message from Thomas. See you tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the Riverfront Cafe. I arrived at the Riverfront 15 minutes before the appointment and settled into a corner table with my back to the wall and a good view of the whole room. Chloe had told me, "Come alone, my father wants to see you." This was going to be interesting, and boy was it. When Thomas Whitfield appeared, he exuded the presence of a corporate lawyer with a 7-figure income, impeccable suit, perfectly combed silver hair, and that confidence that intimidates before he even speaks. Seeing me seated, he paused for a second, took a deep breath, and approached without losing an iota of confidence. I want to talk about your evidence and how to resolve this amicably, he said bluntly. I took out some documents and screenshots, photos of his daughter cheating on me for months, messages in which she planned to leave me without drama, the snapshots at my family's cabin. I felt a chill hearing him mention the cabin. He waited for me to process everything and cleared his throat, looking around to make sure no one was spying on us. What exactly do you want? I replied calmly. The signed baseball glove from my father, my grandfather's watch that she took when she moved out of the house, and the $4,000 wedding deposits that came from my account. Thomas nodded. You'll have your things by Friday. He turned to leave but stopped before exiting. By the way, I don't approve of the way she used you. My wife and I raised her better. He turned his back and walked out. A few seconds later, I heard my voice as I turned toward the door. One more thing. If anything else of mine disappears, I will send those photos to your wife, your partners, and whoever else is necessary. Just as he promised, 3 days later, a messenger dropped off a package at my office with the glove, the watch, and a cashier's check for $4,000. There was no note, but I didn't expect one. A day later, I received a message from Sarah. Can we meet? It's important. We met at a quiet downtown bar. As I walked in, I saw she was uneasy, fidgeting with the rim of her glass. I sat across from her and asked, What's wrong? Chloe doesn't know I'm here, right? Sarah shook her head and quietly told me everything. It's a disaster. It's no longer my problem. But Dorian is showing his true colors, controlling, jealous. He checks her phone. He interrogates her about any man who catches her eye. Last week, she whispered, he caught her coming home late from what was supposed to be a work dinner. He surprised her. And how does all that affect you? I asked. She sighed. He's thinking of making her quit her job because he hates that she works with male doctors. He wants her to give up her career for him. She made a huge mistake, but she's too proud to admit it. Remember that note she left in your birthday gift? She only had the courage to write it. She couldn't tell you in person. She hesitated and added, I'm telling you this because I know you really cared, unlike Dorian, who sees her as a trophy. I always thought you deserved better. I thanked her for her measured concern. Thanks, really. I'm moving on. I feel good. I know, she replied quickly, looking away. I just wanted you to know. As we finished our drink, I couldn't help but wonder if her gesture was pure solidarity or if there was something more. In any case, I now had allies. Thomas on one side, Sarah, who was now part of Chloe's inner circle, plus David and Stephanie, who knew the ins and outs of the hospital and Dorian's office. With patience, now that I wasn't planning a wedding, I put my plan into action. Dinner with Craig, a university friend who works on the state medical board. I casually mentioned my concern about a doctor with possible prescription irregularities. I asked him what the process would be for filing an anonymous complaint. He explained that those involving controlled substances are thoroughly investigated and gave me instructions on how to do it formally, warning me not to file unfounded complaints. Meeting with Stephanie at a restaurant. At first she was reticent, but she eventually confessed that Dorian had been caught with a stash of unprescribed oxycodone. He claimed they were for an old sports injury, but the amount exceeded the normal. Furthermore, she noticed strange behaviors. He would disappear for half an hour at work and return with constricted pupils, the classic sign of someone under the influence of opiates. I wanted her to sign a declaration, but she refused. Her career was at stake. However, she hinted that if someone else put pressure in the right place, no one would bother her. More informal meetings with Sarah. Her messages about Chloe's failed relationship with Dorian were constant. She told me Dorian was hosting a big housewarming party at the $1.2 million mansion where Chloe had moved in the city's most exclusive area. He wants everyone to admire his perfect life, Sarah told me. His father planned to attend along with hospital executives. His mother, on the other hand, did not approve of anything he did. Information from David, my contact at the hospital. Dorian was going to perform a high-profile surgery the day after the party, the daughter of a senator, with guaranteed media coverage. It's the perfect moment for him, he texted me, filing the complaint. The night before the party, I submitted an anonymous report to the medical board detailing dates and discrepancies between the drug inventory and usage records. I provided data verified by David, enough to trigger an investigation, alliance with a hospital security guard. I paid him $200 to alert me to any strange behavior by Dorian during his shifts. The following week I did not attend the party, but Sarah sent me live photos. Chloe was splendid in a designer dress, Dorian exerting his authority over colleagues, Chloe's father, rubbing shoulders with executives. Everything looked impeccable, expensive, and very haughty. Exactly the perfect image of someone about to crash. On Monday, Dorian performed the surgery without incident. What no one expected was that morning, the hospital ordered a random drug test for all surgical personnel. According to my informant, this mysterious policy only affected Dorian's team. On Tuesday, I received the message, Dr. Chamberlain has been summoned to an emergency meeting with the administration. He came out of there frowning. On Friday, David informed me that Dorian had stopped attending the hospital, rumors of a suspension while the accusations were investigated. Patience had worked. Now, the following Tuesday, Sarah called me in a panic. Ethan, everything is falling apart. Dorian's license was suspended for drug issues, and Chloe is on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I replied calmly, That's a shame. How is she handling it? She's in denial, Sarah said. She insists it's a mistake, that someone is sabotaging him. She paused and finished. Plus, she found out about his ex-fiancées in the plural. There were 3, not 2. It seemed she was having a major awakening and the worst was yet to come. Tomorrow, the hospital board meets to decide whether to terminate his contract. With the suspension and the ongoing investigation, his medical liability insurance conditioned coverage on him maintaining employment. If he's fired, they cancel the policy. If he loses his position, he loses everything. It's over. Meanwhile, Chloe is only on the lease for their apartment, but not on any joint bank account. He gambled everything on that relationship, even using his savings to furnish the house. I almost feel sorry for her, but only almost. 2 days later, everything collapsed. Dorian was fired. The medical board's investigation progressed, and according to Sarah, he spiraled into self-destruction. He blamed Chloe for his misfortune, drank uncontrollably, and became verbally aggressive. She sees the truth now, but she's trapped, Sarah confessed to me at a coffee shop. She's afraid to leave. She has nowhere to go. Her father offered to help her, but Chloe, out of pride, rejected the offer. I nodded sympathetically, though internally I couldn't help but think, Karma is a bastard. That very night, around 2 a.m., my doorbell rang insistently. Thanks to the new cameras, I saw Dorian staggering on the porch, drunk and shouting incoherently. I didn't answer. I calmly called the police, recorded the entire sequence, and filed a complaint the next day. 3 days later, my mailbox appeared shattered. The next day, I noticed one of my truck tires was slowly losing air. I didn't react immediately. I reinforced my security system, installed more cameras, and documented every incident in detail. That night, at 9 p.m., the doorbell rang again. No one was expecting me. Checking the cameras, I saw Chloe with smudged makeup. I opened the intercom. "What do you want, Ethan?" "Please, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." Against my instinct, I opened the door slightly, blocking access. Chloe was devastated. She confessed that Dorian was not who he claimed to be. He had lied about everything: his finances, his past, and even his supposed health problems. With a choked voice, she said, "It was the worst mistake of my life. I had stability, honesty, and true love, and I threw it away for a fantasy that collapsed in months. Now Dorian could lose his license. The condo will go into foreclosure. He's up to his neck in debt. He drinks daily, and last night he pushed me against the wall." I suggested she call the police. "No, or her ex. I have nowhere to go," she sobbed. "My parents are out of town and Sarah's house is too small. I just need a couple of days." I laughed, unable to help myself. "Are you kidding me? You want to stay here after everything that happened?" "I know I don't deserve your help, but you're the only one who's been there," she replied. "The person I loved wouldn't have left a cowardly note in a birthday gift. Nor would she have taken family heirlooms out of spite. Nor would she have moved in with another man without thinking. Dorian manipulated my decisions. Now I must face the consequences." My face hardened upon hearing that familiar anger. "So, you're going to leave me homeless after 4 years together? How ironic." Her voice trembled as she added, "By the way, how is Dorian's career? They say he's doing badly." She fell silent, realizing I knew the truth. "I reported him," I admitted, shrugging. "Someone had to stop an incapacitated doctor from operating. People see it as a public service." "You ruined his life and his career, not his addictions," she reproached me. "And you took everything we had." I stepped closer and lowered my voice. "Believe me, there was more than one victim. Sarah passed me details, and the nurse Stephanie too. Nobody likes to feel used and discarded." The next day, Dorian reappeared, this time at 11 a.m., staggering and banging on my door. I didn't even bother to open it. I called the police and watched as they took him away for trespassing and public intoxication. I added the video to my file. A while later, Chloe sent her father to negotiate. Thomas Whitfield stood uncomfortably on my porch and began politely. "Ethan, there have been unfortunate events with Dorian. Chloe is in a vulnerable position. I'm concerned about her safety. We could reach an agreement, a temporary truce." I raised an eyebrow. He proposed that she could stay in my guest room for 1 or 2 months until the situation became clearer. I replied coldly, "Hosting my ex, the same person who took my family watches and half the apartment without contributing anything." Thomas lowered his gaze, ashamed. "I know what I'm about to say sounds strange, almost delusional, but it's real. Thomas Whitfield, Chloe's father, made me a direct proposal. I'm willing to compensate you. Say $20,000 if you allow Chloe to use your guest room for 1 or 2 months. No strings attached." I stared at him, incredulous. "You're trying to buy me to clean up your daughter's mess." "I'm trying to protect her," he replied, unfazed. "And where was that concern when she was ruining my life? When she moved in with a man who was still legally married when she met him?" I asked him how he knew Dorian hadn't divorced his second wife when he started dating Chloe. "I did my homework," he admitted seriously, "just as I investigated his prescription habits and the malpractice complaints." Thomas was silent for a long time. "What do you want, Ethan?" "Nothing from you or Chloe," I replied. "I just want to be left alone to rebuild my life, the same life your daughter destroyed." As he was leaving, I threw him a final remark. In case it helps you, Sarah tried to warn you several times. Maybe you should start listening to your younger daughter. She seems to be the only one in that family with a true moral compass. The following weeks were a parade of desperate attempts at contact. Chloe sent audio messages filled with crying, while Dorian, when sober enough, sent texts that I simply documented and forwarded to his lawyer. Thomas even tried to tempt me again, increasing his offer to $50,000. I rejected all his proposals. Finally, everyone understood that I would not agree. Chloe returned to her parents' house, humiliated. Dorian, for his part, faced criminal charges for prescription fraud, had lost his license, and, it was rumored, had left town. The perfect couple fell apart spectacularly, leaving only ruins in their wake. Chloe, who used to fill Instagram with photos of her perfect life and dream relationship, began posting vague phrases about forgiveness and new beginnings. According to Sarah, her former hospital friends stopped interacting with her posts. The comment sections, which used to be filled with fire emojis and praises of an ideal couple, fell silent. Chloe ended up sleeping at different acquaintances' homes, wearing out every welcome with her constant need for attention and drama until she had no choice but to return to the family home. Her hospital colleagues stopped returning her calls. The pharmaceutical company where she worked put her on administrative leave as soon as Dorian's scandal publicly erupted. They couldn't afford to have a sales representative linked, even indirectly, to a prescription fraud case. For someone whose identity revolved entirely around status and image, it was a definitive fall, and I kept the house. I finally adopted the dog I always wanted, a rescued Labrador mix I named Cooper. I started playing basketball with David again. I upgraded my old Tacoma by installing a new sound system and wheels. Max, the cat, eventually accepted Cooper, and the three of us formed a comfortable bachelor routine. Sometimes I go out for coffee with Sarah. In every way, she is everything Chloe never was, and for me, that is the highest compliment possible. I sold the engagement ring and slowly began to understand that sometimes the best revenge is not watching someone suffer, but observing as they realize they are no longer a part of your life. 6 months have passed. Life has strange ways of settling. Today, as I write this, Cooper is snoring at my feet, and Max is watching from the armrest of my father's old recliner. I made the best possible decisions. I chose to surround myself with those who don't value how much I earn or the car I drive. Things are going well at work, too. I was promoted to project leader last month, the result of the long hours of effort after the breakup. Regarding Chloe and Dorian, the fall was even more satisfying than I imagined. Dorian not only permanently lost his license after it was discovered that he was using other doctors' DEA registration numbers to issue illegal prescriptions, but he also faces criminal charges. According to David, he filed for bankruptcy and returned defeated to his hometown in Ohio. The $1.2 million mansion was foreclosed, and his Maserati was impounded in the hospital parking lot, a moment that became legendary in those hallways. Chloe, for her part, tried to save her career in pharmaceutical sales, but her reputation was shattered. It's not easy to sell medications when your partner is known for losing his license due to drug problems. She ended up accepting a sales position at a much smaller company with a significantly lower salary. Last week I saw her at a traffic light. She was driving her father's old Honda while I passed by in my newly detailed Tacoma with new tires. Our eyes met for just a second. I didn't make any gesture, I just drove on. I think that indifference hit her harder than any insult I could have thrown. As for Thomas, he also suffered the consequences. Apparently the photos at the cabin were leaked. I swear it wasn't me. That unleashed his wife's fury. Dorian had been a family friend, and Thomas covering everything up was an unforgivable betrayal. According to Sarah, the family fight was epic, and Thomas ended up sleeping in his office for a month. Meanwhile, the coffee meetings with Sarah evolved into dinners. We took it slowly, both marked by our experiences. However, there is something real between us that I never had with Chloe. Chloe found out about our relationship 3 weeks ago. Passing by her parents' house, she saw us having dinner together. The outburst was of mythical proportions, screams, accusations of betrayal, dramatic scenes. Sarah, ever serene, cut her off with 5 words that still resonate in my memory. It's not all about you. I have never felt more proud of anyone. The irony is palpable. Chloe destroyed a solid relationship, chasing a fantasy that collapsed, while I found something authentic with someone who was always there, right in front of my eyes. Her parents, curiously, have been very supportive. Perhaps they understand that in the end, this is simply an act of karmic balance. So, that's my story. Thank you for reading, Dory. Thank you.